All right, boys, let's start with this question here, question 12. With the equation y equals 3x minus 1 is shown on the graph, state the equation of a line which is parallel and perpendicular. Okay, so first of all, two lines are parallel. That means the gradients of two separate lines, M1 is equal to M2. So I always refer to M1 as a gradient of line 1, M2 as a gradient of line 2. So in this case, M1 is equal to 3. Therefore, since they're parallel, M2 will also be equal to 3. So any line parallel will be y equals 3x plus any number that you can think of. Okay, so I'm going to put 3x plus 3. Okay, for perpendicular lines, that means that M1 times M2 has to equal -1 if at right angles perpendicular. So therefore, the gradient of the second line is -1 over the gradient of the first line. And since the gradient of the first line is 3, the gradient of my second line has to be -1 on 3. So therefore, the equation of my perpendicular line might be y equals -1 on 3x. And again, I'm going to pick 3 again. Could have picked any number I wanted. It says now to sketch them on the graph above. Okay, so for 3x plus 3, I've got a gradient. The y-intercept goes through 3, and the gradient is positive 3. So we sort of go, well, what if we go 3 down and 1 to the left, which is the same as going 1 across and 3 up. So my line, using a ruler, might be that line there is parallel. If y equals -1/3 x plus 3, again, let's go through 3 and a gradient of a negative gradient, and we'll go 3 across and 1 up. So 1, 2, 3 across and 1 up is there. So if I draw that line, oops, I'll try and do it a bit better, is something like that. Okay, so you could have had any lines as long as the key part is you could have had any line as long as the perpendicular line has a gradient of -1/3 and the parallel line has a gradient of 3. Solve the following equations. Don't forget you can check your answers using your CAS. Okay, so let's just do these anyway. So multiply by 15 both sides. So I get 8y plus 3 is equal to 5 times 15. So subtract 3, 8y is equal to 75 minus 3. Y is equal to 72 on 9 if I divide, which is equal, 72 on 8, which is equal to 9. All right. With these ones here, remember cross multiplying. So multiply this one by 2, multiply this one by 5, and multiply this side by 2 and 5. That way I get 2 times 2x plus 3 plus 5 times 3x plus 1 is equal to 30. So now if I group 4x plus 6 equals, plus 15x plus 5 is equal to 30. 19x equals, that's 11 on this side, subtract 11 is equal to 19. X is equal to 1. Okay. Find the gradient of the line joining the points. So we should know the gradient M is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which is equal to x1, actually I'll call that x2 y2, x1 y1 is 12 minus 6 over 9 minus 3, which is equal to 6 over 12, which is equal to a half. So the gradient is a half. To find the gradient of this line, well, let's pick some points that the lines go through. I'm going to pick that point there and that point there. So the points are 0, 1, and what's that other point? 1, -3. Possibly we could have picked this one up here, which looks like -1, 5. But it doesn't matter. I'm going to pick those 2 points and use the same rule as I used above. M is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which is negative 4 over 1, which equals negative 4, which seems reasonable, at least because we've got a negative gradient. I've got a negative slope there, so a negative answer seems reasonable. Okay. Sketch the graph of. All right, so all it says is to sketch the graph. Y-intercept, C is equal to 1, the gradient is negative 2. So a y-intercept of 1, gradient of negative 2 means I go 1, 2 down and 1 across. So maybe it looks like that, okay? And I might call that point there the point 1, negative 1. So all I really need is an intercept labeled and one other point labeled. Now, if you find x and y intercepts, that's fine, okay? As long as you've got one other point labeled. Show that the line with the equation, that is parallel to the line with the equation. Okay, parallel lines, what do we know about them? Well, hopefully we know M1 has to equal M2 for parallel. So what is gradient 1? We'll have to rearrange this equation first. So I'll get negative 2y is equal to 7 minus x, divide by negative 2, y equals negative 7 on 2 plus x on 2. Therefore, M1 is equal to a half. Remember, it's a half, not x on 2. Gradient 2, M2 is equal to a half. Therefore, parallel, since M1 equals M2, which is equal to a half. Okay, what about perpendicular? For perpendicular, M1 times M2 is equal to negative 1. So I still have to find some gradients. So gradient 1, I get negative 4y equals 5 minus x, subtract x on both sides, divide by negative 4, y equals negative 5 on 4, plus x on 4. Therefore, the gradient of that line is equal to 1/4. What about gradient 2? I get y is equal to negative 4x minus 1. So M2 is equal to negative 4. Since, multiply them, 1/4 times negative 4 equals negative 1. Therefore, they're perpendicular. All right. If we're solving inequalities, we treat them exactly the same as equations. Let's get 2 on the right-hand side. So I get 7x is greater than or equal to 16 minus 2, which is 14. Divide both sides by 7. I get x is greater than or equal to 2. Just remember, the only time dividing and multiplying by a negative number, the inequalities swap. They swap direction. Otherwise, we treat it exactly the same. Look at B, add 3 to both sides. 2x is, less than or equal to 15 plus 3, which is 18. Divide by 2, x is less than 9. Okay? So, didn't have to divide or multiply by a negative, so I didn't have to do anything with the sign. Solve the equation. Do exactly the same thing. Expand and group terms. So multiply by 2, I get 8x minus 2 is less than or equal to 5x plus 10. Might subtract 5x onto this side, so I get 8x minus 5x, and what if I add 2 across, is less than or equal to 10 plus 2. So I get 3x is less than or equal to 12, x is less than or equal to 4. All right. Solve simultaneously. This one is set up as a substitution method. So if y is equal to that, well, then when I get to this y, I can substitute it in. So for example, I've got 2x minus 3 times y, and y is equal to 3x plus 14 is equal to negative 21. So don't forget, that's just replacing y with that expression up there. Okay. So if I expand now, 2x minus 9x minus 3/14, which are 42. Use your calculator if you're not sure. Negative 21. 2x minus 9x is negative 7x. Add 42 to both sides, I get positive 21. X equals 21 on negative 7, which equals negative 3. So there's my x value. So substitute that into my y value. Y is equal to 3 times x, which is negative 3, plus 14, which equals negative 9 plus 14, which is equal to 5. Therefore, x is equal to negative 3, y is equal to 5. Don't forget, at a minimum, solve simultaneous on the CAS. And that will get you these answers, which will get you 2 marks. This 22 is set up more for an elimination method where we think to ourselves, okay, because there's not a nice clear cut y equals or x equals, okay, so it's not there. So I could rearrange. It's going to be easier if I rewrite the second equation? What if I multiply that second equation by 2? And if I do that, it becomes 6x plus 4y is equal to 22. So now I can add these two numbers. Negative 4y plus 4y is 0. So I get 4x plus 6x is 10x. Those two are 0 equals 28 plus 22, which is 50. So divide by 10 and we get x is equal to 5. So now substitute into any one of them. It doesn't matter which one. I'll pick the first one. Actually, I'll pick the second one because there's no negative sign there. So I get 3 times 5 plus 2y is equal to 11. So I get 15 plus 2y equals 11. Subtract by 15. 2y equals negative 4. Divide by 2. Y equals negative 2. So we get x equals to 5. Y equals negative 2. Okay, answer section. Okay. Sketch the line of y equals x plus 2 on the axis below. If you're not sure, do a table of values. X, y, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example. And if I put 1 in there, I get y is equal to 3. Put 2 plus 2 is 4. 3 plus 2 is 5. 4 plus 2 is 6. 5 plus 2 is 7. So all I need to do, if I put 1 point at, say, at x equal to 1, y is equal to 3. And 5, 7. Where 7 is there. And just draw a straight line through them. Now, what if I can do a ruler somehow? How do I do a ruler? Doesn't matter. Let's just go with blue line will do. Okay. On the axis below. Draw the line AB that passes through the points 1, 0 and 5, 4. So where's 1, 0? 1, 0 is there. 5, 4 is 5, 4, which is there. And I just draw the line to those points. Okay, so that's the line from A to B. Find the equation of the line AB. So to find the equation, I need a gradient and I need an intercept. Gradient is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which is equal to 4 minus 0 over 5 minus 1, which is equal to 4 over 4, which is equal to 1. So therefore I know y equals x plus c. What if I substitute a point in? Doesn't matter. 1, 0. So x is 1, y is 0. 0 is equal to 1 plus c. So c equals negative 1. So the equation is y equals x minus 1, which kind of looks like it could be right, because if I extend that out, it looks like it's going to go through negative 1. So that's a good sign for us. Prove that the line with the equation y equals x plus 2 is parallel to AB. So parallel, M1 equals M2. M1 is equal to 1. M2 is equal to 1. So since M1 is equal to M2, therefore parallel. Draw the line CD that passes through, let's go green, 1, 7 and 7, 1. 1, 7 is up there, 7, 1 is there. So if I draw that line, I've got that. So that's CD. Find the equation of that line. Okay, so again, I need the gradient. M is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which is equal to negative 6 over 6, which equals negative 1. Seems reasonable, at least the green line's got a negative slope. Same thing, substitute a point in. Y equals minus x plus c. So 7 equals negative 1 plus c. C is equal to 8. Which again, if I extend that, looks like it might go through 8, so that's a good sign. So y equals minus x plus 8. Prove that the line is perpendicular. So for perpendicular lines, m1 times m2 equals negative 1. So in this case, I get negative 1 times positive 1 is equal to negative 1, therefore perpendicular lines. Okay, so just take your time, plot your points, see how we go. The final one, remember our simultaneous equations, what we did last. Set up our equation, Christine. If A is equal to the number of apples and B equals number of bananas, we get 3 apples plus 4 bananas will cost me. Because we're in cents there, can't remember who suggested this, we'll put 130 for 130 cents. So my second equation, 5A plus 1B equals 75 cents. Now, use the calculator here, guys. All right, as soon as we get to this modeling section, use your calculator, and that's all the working you have to show. Since I don't have my calculator on me, which is no excuse, I'm going to solve it that way. So let's multiply everything by 4. I get 20A plus 4B equals 475 to 300. And my other equation, leave it there, is 3A plus 4B equals 130. So let's subtract them. 20A minus 3A is 17A. It's about 17. 17A. 4B minus 4B is 0. 300 minus 130 is 170. Therefore, A is equal to 10. So if I've got that, I can substitute that into any of these equations. So my apples are 10 cents. So 3 times 10 cents plus 4 times B has to equal $1.30. 30 plus 4B is equal to $130, or 4B is equal to 100. So B is equal to 25 cents. Okay, so don't forget we could easily use our calculator there. Last one, although I doubt something like this would be on there. Baker's using dried fruit to make buns. She's already used half the contents of the last 3 kilo bag she has and wants to know how many more buns could possibly be made before she gets a new supply. Each bun uses 8 grams of dried fruit ingredients. So it means we've got, what have we got? We've got grams, so 3 kilograms. So first of 4, what's left? So left we have 1.5 kilograms, which is equal to 1,500 grams. So if each bun, so 8 kilograms for every bun has to be less than or equal to 1,500. Yeah? Does that make sense? So there's our equation. So now if I divide both sides by 8, the number of buns is 1,500 over 8. So B is less than or equal to, using our calculator, When I come up with that, Mr. Gale. So what's that? That's 163.75, I believe. Don't quote me, boys. 8 6 is 48, 8 3 is 24. That looks pretty close. So how many buns could we be made? Well, even though that should round to 164, we don't have enough ingredients. So the number of buns will be equal to 163 buns. 28. The sum of three consecutive even numbers is 474. Okay. We don't need to worry, but for those of you that want to test yourself, let's think about three consecutive even numbers, 2, 4, 6. So if x is equal to 2, the next number 4 would be equal to x plus 2, and the number 6 would be equal to x plus 4, wouldn't it? Yeah. So that means three consecutive even numbers, x plus 2 plus x plus 4, has to equal 474. So that's the hard part. Because now if I add them up, 3x plus 6 equals 474. 3x is equal to, what's that, 468. Use your calculator. X is equal to, goes into 4 once with 1 left over. 3 goes into 16 5 times with 1 left over. 3 into 18 goes 6 times. So we think x is 156, which means then the three numbers should be 156, 158, and 160. So if we check that, 160, 158, 156, oops, 6. 6 and 8 is 14, 1. 10, 17, 1. 474, which is what we were looking for. Job done.